Good day. I'm Kelly Humphries, and with me today in Mission Control Houston is Tim Braithwaite. He's the manager of the Canadian Space Agency Liaison Office here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Tim's pretty excited because Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield is getting ready to arrive at the International Space Station on Friday. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Kelly. It's good to be here.
Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. First off, how you came to be here in Houston and where you're from in Canada, and what your area of expertise is.
Well, I'm Canadian. I'm from Toronto in Ontario, and I'm an engineer. I started out working at what was then called Spar Aerospace in Toronto, and had the good fortune to be an engineer working on the design of the mobile servicing system, Canada's contribution to the space station. And at the time, we were doing detailed design work on the Canadarm2, as we call it, the space station remote manipulator, also called sometimes the Big Arm. And I was there living and working in Toronto. And in 1995, Canadian Space Agency started looking for people who were going to be flight controllers down here and also in Montreal to flight control the robots from Mission Control. And I thought that sounded like a pretty cool thing. So I applied and ended up moving down here, working for the Canadian Space Agency then at the end of 95. I've been here ever since.
You know, you and I have worked a lot of shifts together on Mission Control, and you've always been a pleasure to work with, and your robotic background has led you to rise up the ranks a little bit at CSA, and we're happy to have you as a liaison. Tell us about your role now in working with Canadian astronauts and the overall Canadian international partnership contributions to the International Space Station.
Right. Well, Canada has a small liaison office here. And I left the mission operations world in 2005 and moved up into the liaison office, and I've been managing that office now for about 3 years. We support the program, the space station program, go to a lot of meetings. A lot of what we do in liaison work is communications, putting the right people in touch so that they can solve the problems that we work on every day, and mostly space station work. And as you said, we've got Chris Hadfield in orbit right now. He's on his way to the space station, going to dock tomorrow morning. And we've been working on this mission, the whole Canadian Space Agency team, for several years now, getting ready to have Chris there and to do some really great things. I had the privilege of doing part of that prep work, got to work on some contingency planning, also working with Chris so that we'll be able to get video files and stuff downlinked from him when he's working on station and be able to distribute that out to the folks who need it. You may know Chris is a bit of a musician. Actually, that's an understatement. He's quite an accomplished musician, and we've got some neat musical projects that he's going to be working on.
All right. So, and you guys are especially excited about this particular flight of Canadian to the space station. Why?
Well, that's right, because although this is our second long-duration expedition to the ISS. Bob Thirsk was our first long-duration crew member back, and just 3 years ago now, I think. Chris is going to be the commander of the ISS with the departure of Kevin Ford next March. So Chris will be the first commander, and we're real excited about that, and I think there's going to be a lot of excitement all across Canada when that happens.
Are you seeing signs of that excitement already back home?
Yeah, I think a little bit. There's been quite a bit of attention to this. It's always exciting when we fly astronauts in space, but I think knowing that Chris is going to be the commander inspires the imagination just a little bit more.
Now, you know, one of the key hallmarks of what we're doing up there is research, and I know that Canada is no stranger to performing research on the space station. Do you have some special plans for research for Chris and the team while he's up there?
Well, we have a number of the whole suite of payload experiments going on, and a few of those are Canadian with Canadian PIs that Chris is going to be working on.
And a PI is a principal investigator.
Sorry, that's right. And I should have brought the whole detailed list so I could smell them all out, because if I name a few, I'll know I'll leave some out. But I know there's Radian 2 is one of those he's going to be working on, and the other names escape me just at the moment.
Okay. Now, one experiment that I know is near and dear to you is one that is a combined joint experiment between NASA and the Canadian Space Agency, and that's the refueling capability. There is a special experiment up there that uses the dexterous manipulator system, which is basically an extra pair of arms and fine-tuned hands for the robotic arm. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It looks like we're going to be doing some of that early in the spring next year.
Well, that's right. We've been working on the robotic refueling mission, as it's called, for several years now. And we have another on-orbit session coming up. I believe it's now scheduled to start around mid-January. And the special purpose dexterous manipulator, which we also call Dexter, is the most recent part of our mobile servicing system, and it's really quite large, two-armed robot. But despite its size, it's capable of some really refined dexterous tasks and can align objects to be inserted and withdrawn and fastened up, can align objects with really remarkable precision. So this next set of operations is the latest phase of that, and they're actually going to exercise the refueling part of that. They have simulated fuel, I think it's blue ethanol, and they're actually going to pump fluid this time from one compartment into another using the tools that have been prepared for Dexter to use. So that's actually quite a significant, a really exciting new capability, a new step for robotics in space. And of course, those operations, the dexterous operations, are actually all controlled from here on the ground. Those operations tend to be very slow and deliberate, is a polite way to put that. But in general, those ops take days. So we have teams of flight controllers here on the ground, and we've got a relatively recent capability to control and actually move these robots from the ground. And the flight control team here and also in our control room up at Saint-Hubert near Montreal will be executing those ops.
And just to get to the end result of that, or the end goal there are a lot of satellites in orbit, and we currently don't have a way to refuel them. And there are a lot of satellites that weren't even designed to be refueled in orbit. And this experiment is going to take a look at whether we can actually do that in orbit. Is that right?
Well, that's right. This is a technology demonstration. And we have already seen in the previous on-orbit phases of this of these ops, we've seen lock wires being cut. Often when it's not, as you said, it's not designed to be done robotically. So they closed off the plugs the way they always did, and they would screw fasteners on and they would lock wire them in place. So we have already demonstrated the capability with Dexter and the tools that we have to actually sneak in ever so close, almost like a crochet hook, and to get the wire out and to cut it, and to demonstrate that we can open up those plugs to go connect and pump fluid. So you're right, this is a technology demonstration. We're going to grow this capability, and eventually future robots will be sent up, I'm sure, into high orbit and to go resurrect satellites that were out of gas.
Great. Well, and I know it's going to be really exciting for Chris to be on orbit when that is going on, with a significant contribution of the Canadian Space Agency to the International Space Station. And of course, the station couldn't have been built without the Canadian Space Agency's contribution with the robotic arm that did so much of the work to help put modules in place, and is continuing to be a workhorse so that we can get things done on orbit when we have spacewalks that we need to replace parts or bring new components up. So it's great to have you here, and I hear that Chris actually, since this is kind of a holiday mission arrival, that he may be doing some special things. Has he given you any sneak information about what he's planning with his crewmates?
We're going to enjoy those Christmas surprises together, but I expect I'll be in here quite a few days over the holidays to see what's going on and to get those files out where they need to go.
Okay. Well, Tim Braithwaite, thank you so much for being here today and talking with us about Canada's contributions to the International Space Station, one of the key 5 partners in this multinational effort to do research on orbit on the International Space Station. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure.